What's up? Hey, what's good? What's poppin'? I am Miss Berry. Welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you guys for sliding through and coming to kick it with me. As you guys can see from the title, I am tuning back into Mr. Larry Elder. I know it's been a little minute since I reacted to him, so I'm pretty interested to see what this particular video, y'all know I can't talk, is about. You know, you guys always recommending that I react to Larry Elder as well. So I'm not gonna do too much talking, y'all. Let's go ahead and get straight up into it. All right, y'all, this weather change, I feel like like you have to have them vitamins because being sick is crazy.
Black History Month, I'm not a fan. I'm with actor Morgan Freeman on this one.
Black History Month you find ridiculous. Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well,
He got a point.
I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
Oh, goodness, Morgan.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month.
I like the way he put
Black
that.
history is American history.
Now, maybe Black History Month wouldn't be so
I'm
bad
sorry,
if they actually
and
taught
I'm not trying
Black
to,
history.
crack up laughing, y'all, because I know it's a very serious manner, but, excuse me, I've never seen that interview or anything with Morgan Freeman. I really haven't seen him outside of the movie, so to actually, hear his opinion on something where he's not acting, it was pretty funny, just the way that he said it and stuff, but it made sense. It makes perfect sense. I didn't even think about it that way until, he just said it like, oh, you're gonna sum up my history in a month or whatever, So it made me think about it differently when I say, and Black History Month is actually my birthday month, February. What are the odds?
Things that blacks are misled
Excuse
about.
me, y'all.
Slavery, gun control, and the minimum wage. First, slavery. Now, when I studied slavery in high school, I assumed, the way a lot of people do, that slavery was something that just happened to black people in Africa.
One of the sad
Mr.
things is that we talk in this country as if slavery was something unique to the United States or to blacks and whites. And in point of fact, slavery was one of the oldest institutions among human beings. They go back as far as there is recorded history. And in every single part of the world, Polynesians enslaved other Polynesians. For most of history, people enslaved people who were the same race as themselves.
Yeah,
for
I
the
just
simple
learned that
reason
too.
they simply didn't have the resources to go to another continent and take people from another continent and move them en masse someplace else.
Now, slavery could not have happened without the complicity of African chieftains who sold Africans not just to European slavers, but to Muslim slavers as well.
But when white captains came offering manufactured goods, weapons, and rum for slaves, African kings and merchants had little reason to hesitate. They viewed the people they sold not as fellow Africans, but criminals, debtors, or prisoners of war from rival tribes. By selling them, kings enriched their own realms and strengthened them against neighboring enemies. African kingdoms prospered from the slave trade, but meeting the Europeans' massive demand created intense competition. Slavery replaced other criminal sentences, and capturing slaves became a motivation for war rather than its result. To defend themselves from slave raids, neighboring kingdoms needed European firearms, which they also bought with slaves. The slave trade had become an arms race, altering societies and economies across the continent.
Did you know that Muslim slavers took more blacks out of Africa than did European slavers? The Muslim slave trade began centuries earlier and continued long after the European slave trade ended.
Slavery, yes, during the 9th up to the 13th century, slavery was still very much an Islamic phenomenon as compared to the West. Of course, there was ancient slavery in many other societies, but in terms of chattel slavery, in terms of slavery as an institution, that was profitable. That was very much still an Arab Islamic preserve until the West came in sometime from the 15th, 16th century onwards.
Just how extensive was this Arab Muslim slave trade of Africans?
But slavery was a very important part of Islamic expansion in West Africa, and in fact in the Sudan, and from the very earliest period of Islamic penetration into Africa. It started by
Pictures are always interesting
buying, purchasing slaves and trading in slaves, and then it went on from purchasing to raiding for slaves and capturing slaves deliberately, especially mainly black Africans, and transporting them into North Africa and into the.
It's crazy because I'm just thinking, like, every single time he say slaves, 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 it just gets in my mind to, thinking. I'm just like, okay, so what was the whole real purpose of having a slave? I'm not necessarily just really asking that question. This is just me, in my head, asking, and then I'll come and I'll answer, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm talking to myself in my head, y'all. Don't act like y'all don't do it, because I know we all do. But so basically, I'm just thinking about what was the purpose? Like, to make them do stuff, to make them, do what? Like, all of these different things. And then I'm like thinking how, you could actually pay people, you know what I'm saying? To pay people to do this and do that. But then when you're thinking about, okay, so was it because of money, or was it because of power, or, this or that? It's like, okay, well, shoot, we not making no money this way, so let's just sell people, and let's just get them to do this, do that. Like, I'm just like, I'm thinking of it in a whole deeper sense, I guess. This is just all types of, thoughts going on in my brain. That's all, y'all. I hope I didn't confuse anybody trying to explain what's going on inside my brain. But yeah, so I'm just really just thinking deeply about it, just trying to figure out pretty much like why. But I'll save that for another day.
Into Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, and onwards to the Ottoman Empire to Turkey. So slavery was a very endemic part of Islamic interaction with Africa. And in West Africa, the jihad's period of the 18th and 19th century involved massive slave raiding and slave trading. And many of the slaves that were captured and sent and sold and taken into the transatlantic slave trade, most of those who were doing the raiding at the time were Muslim communities because they were the dominant tribes. So a lot of that happened. That is not to say that non-Muslim communities were involved in raiding, but the dominant tribes were the Muslim communities that were doing the raiding at the time.
Now, I've heard that Muslim slavers and Muslim slave owners treated slaves better than did European slavers and European and American slave owners. But is that true?
One of the things I explored in my book is...
I mean, I'm not saying that in a harsh way, and I'm just saying none of that really matters, because it's just whether these slave masters were nice and these was mean or whatever. It's just the whole sense of saying it, just hearing it, just all sounds wrong. It just sounds like I just want to go fight somebody. Like, I'm just being honest.
This
but I do understand what they're saying.
Muslims treated their slaves much more humanely than the Western slave trade. And what I found out in my own research was that that is not necessarily the case, and that there were very harsh treatments of slaves by Muslim groups. It was just a done deal at the time. And one of the key differences I looked at in my book whereas slaves taken to the West were able to marry and reproduce and have their families, and you can still find large populations of African Americans today in North America and in the Caribbean. You go to the Islamic world and you find very few black remnants of the slave trade, which was very massive. And one of the reasons is that many of the male black slaves taken into the Islamic world were castrated as eunuchs, which meant that they could not, of course, reproduce. And the other factor is that many of the women were taken as concubines by their slave masters. And
I'm not
they gave
surprised,
birth to mixed
unfortunately.
races, and they were very much absorbed into the society. So you don't have black slave kind of descendants in the Muslim world as you would in North America. And part of the reason is the castration and the way the slaves were treated.
Now, slavery ended in the West, in America, not until after the Civil War. But what about the Arab Muslim slave trade? When did it end? In fact, has it ended?
Slavery persisted in Islamic countries far, far longer than it did in the West. The West abolished slavery long before the Islamic countries ever abolished slavery. And they did so under a lot of pressure from colonial governments and from Western governments and from all kinds of activist groups. And in fact, the Saudi Arabia, for instance, abolished slavery in 1961 or 1960 thereabout, whereas Mauritania abolished slavery in 1981. And these were done on paper, and a lot of it is still being done. In practice, there are still a lot of slaves in Muslim countries. And the Sudan, during the Civil War, there was a lot of slave raiding going on done by the Arab Muslims in the north against the enemies and the Christian Africans in the south. So even up to the 90s and this century, there was still capturing of young African men, boys in the Sudan for sale. So slavery continues, even though it has been abolished on paper in many Muslim countries.
Now, gun control. Liberals, especially those living in the inner city where crime is high, often demand further gun control legislation.
We fought a good fight earlier this year, but we came up short. And that means we've got to get back up and go back at it, because as long as there are those who fight to make it as easy as possible for dangerous people to get their hands on guns, then we've got to work as hard as possible for the sake of our children. We've got to be ones who are willing to do.
So what I was gonna say was, it's just crazy to, for them to be talking about gun control and, for those who took the time to actually get licensed, like myself, it's just like none of that matters now that I don't, honestly, let me not say that because I'm not exactly sure if that's everywhere, every state. I didn't really check that, but I do know about, my state and where I am and surrounding. So, for the most part, I believe it's not just here, but, at the fact that it's just, it don't matter now if you have a license to carry, because it just don't matter. Like, they just took it away. So now anybody could just be licensed to carry, and you don't have to have proof. You don't have to go through those necessary steps. You don't have to do the fingerprints. And like, I'm just, but okay, let's just keep
More work to make it harder.
Are black students taught that the gun control movement began in this country as a means to make sure newly freed black slaves did not get their hands on guns? In the most infamous Supreme Court decision ever, Dred Scott, the Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney said, if blacks are anything other than chattel property, why, they may be able to get their hands on guns.
It was a horrible, racist Southern Democrat judge named Roger Taney, and he determined that Dred Scott could not count for more than 3/5 of a person. Why? Because Dred Scott couldn't have a firearm. In fact, Judge Taney later noted, and this is in a chapter in my first book, Hands Off My Gun, that in order for him to give Dred Scott full citizenship and count him as an actual law-abiding American, that meant that Dred Scott would have the, quote, full liberty to have and to bear arms. And Judge Taney couldn't have that.
Next, Democrats love them some minimum wage, don't they?
Tom Steyer wants a higher minimum wage. The billionaire says that he would propose.
Can y'all believe that minimum wage was $7.50 or $7.25? Or I'm not sure if that was everywhere. And shoot, it's probably still some places that's, that's like that. I know, places like Waffle House and stuff like that, well, in Georgia. They get paid from tips, but also a certain little hourly amount. Like, I think that's like majority of every waitress. But anyway, yeah. But the thing about it is, like, them raising minimum wage, you know what else is also raising? Everything in the economy. price of raisin. Like, I'm talking about food. So what was I looking at that was like, did you okay, so I went grocery shopping yesterday, y'all. I know this is besides the point, but you know how much bacon is? Like, I know this is weird, but y'all comment down below and let me know if y'all paid attention. If you do eat bacon, whether it's turkey bacon, regular bacon, whatever bacon, vegan bacon, it don't matter. Y'all, let me know, how much do bacon currently cost in y'all state? Because right now, when I picked up that pack of bacon, I put it down when I looked at the price because it was almost $8. They had some that was like, you know, 6 something, almost 7. And it's just for bacon and then a big bag of chips. Not like, you know, we used to have the $4, then we used to have the big dollar bag, dollar something bags or whatever. But, you know, the family size, you can kind of share bags. They're $5, almost $6. Like, at this point, I just want to just grow my own everything. I just need to be a farmer or whatever and just grow my own everything. Then that way I don't have to
Pay
worry.
workers at least $22 an hour if he wins the White House. Steyer floated the idea yesterday during a campaign stop in South Carolina.
Now, during Black History Month, our black students taught that the minimum wage movement in this country began as a means to make sure that blacks who are willing to work for less did not take jobs away from whites who are unwilling to work for less. By the 1960s, many African Americans were employed as farmers. This changed in 1967 when the government extended the minimum wage laws to American farmers as part of the war on poverty. Black farmers who were accustomed to making a modest $3.50 per day were now legally required to be paid $1 per hour, a tremendous increase in wages. The effect of this law was immediate and undeniable. An estimated 25,000 farm workers were put out of work in the Mississippi Delta alone. Black farmers were not oblivious to the cause and effect. That dollar an hour ain't worth nothing, said the wife of one day laborer. It would have been better if it had been 50 cents a day if you work every day. 50 cents per day, of course, was a lower wage than what her husband would have been earning prior to the law. Her point was clear. The federal minimum wage law destroyed their ability to earn a living. End of quote.
The first minimum wage law in our country was the Davis-Bacon Act of 1931. And the Davis-Bacon Act says that all workers in federally funded or federally assisted construction projects must be paid the prevailing wage. And if you look on page 6513 of the Congressional Record on March 31st, 1931, you'll see congressional testimony where congressmen will say, see that contractor over there? He brings cheap colored labor up from the South, puts them in cabins, and it's labor of that sort that has to compete, that white Americans are competing against.
One of the things that my friends on the left think is just grand is the minimum wage. And 100 years ago, the minimum wage came into being in the United States, state by state, and its declared purpose was to keep immigrants, women, blacks, and Chicanos out of the labor force, to drive them out entirely.
Interesting picture.
Newspaper editorials, the economics profession, they all said, oh boy, this is good for the Anglo-Saxon race.
Thus the consequences of
like, I have no judgment. I'm not exactly sure why she sounds the way she sounds, what she's went through, going through, or whatever the case may be. But it almost sounds like it's like two-tone, if that makes sense. When she was, it's like, it sounds very two-tone, like I was hearing her twice at once, like, if that makes sense.
Wage rates have been almost wholly bad to increase unemployment and to increase poverty. Moreover, the effects have been concentrated on the groups that the do-gooders would most like to help. The people who have been hurt most by minimum wage laws are the blacks. I have often said that the most anti-Negro law on the books of this land is the minimum wage rate.
I'm Larry Elder, and we've got a country to save. I'll see you next time.
Was there anything else? Oh, I thought it was something else that was gonna pop up. But anyway, y'all, we're gonna end that video right there like that. It was definitely interesting. I definitely learned some stuff that I most definitely did not really know. stuff that I did not really pay attention to, stuff that I did not even really think of. Like, it really got my brain to work in emotion, but definitely pretty interesting. And then it makes you think, like, you know, it compares now. Like, I'm comparing, I'm like, but, you know, like, I'm sorry, y'all, I hit the mic with my hand. But anyway, y'all, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this reaction video just as much as I enjoy reacting to it. Y'all comment down below, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts about it. Because, like, we got some things to talk about, guys. Like, we got to talk about, don't forget to let me know how much is bacon in your state. Like, I really want to know if you guys know how much it is there, because these prices, it's crazy. Gas is up, down, rent up, down. Like, I just, y'all, go over to Larry Elder's channel and show him some love by hitting that subscribe button. Go subscribe to his channel, because I'm sure you guys don't want to miss the good information he puts out as well. Also, guys, the original video will be linked in my description box down below, just in case if you guys want to, you know, tune back in and check it out on your own personal time. I know I was in the way down there a little bit some of the time. And also, if you are new here and you are not subscribed to my channel, then don't leave without hitting that red subscribe button and ringing that bell, so when I drop a new video, you will know, you won't miss it, and you'll be right here. So, I don't know why I keep clapping, like I hear music or something. But that was definitely a pretty interesting video. So now I'm about to go digging, seeing what else I can come up with. I said come up with, or find, whatever you may say. Or you guys can also comment down below and send me recommendations, whatever you may choose. But anyway, as usual, it's a pleasure, and I appreciate you guys for coming through and coming to kick it with me. And until next time.